the first chapter, we reviewed research, policy, and equity principles for emerging bilingual students. In this second chapter, we will talk about how bilingual education and English as a second language programs are funded across the United States. Yes, money matters, and how that money is spent also matters. About 1 in 10 public school students, or 5 million students across the country, are emergent bilingual students. With those numbers of emergent bilinguals in mind, let's review how funding is provided for emergent bilingual students.
At the federal level, a small portion of costs for educating emerging bilingual students are covered through the Title III grants, but most of the funding is allocated by the state. What is Title III? Title III is part of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, as amended by the Every Student Succeed Act of 2015, ESL. The purpose of Title III is to help ensure that emergent bilingual students attain English language proficiency and meet state academic standards. Federal funding is provided through various grant programs to assist state education agencies, SEAs, and local education agencies, LEAs, in accomplishing this. 48 states and the District of Columbia provide funding specifically for emergent bilingual students. Similar to categorical funding for other student population, funding for emergent bilingual students looks different in every state.
States use one of 3 primary funding models for emergent bilingual students: formula funding models, categorical funding, and reimbursement funding. In the formula funded model, allocations for emergent bilingual students, education is included in the state's primary funding model. For example, in the District of Columbia, emergent bilingual students receive a weight of 0.49. In Texas, emergent bilingual students' weight remains one of the lowest at 0.10, or 10% additional funding above base level. For most students, 0.15 for those enrolled in dual language programs. The funding generated from emergent bilingual weight is referred to as the bilingual education allotment.
States that follow the categorical funding model allocate funding through mechanisms outside of the primary funding formula. For example, in Utah, lawmakers distribute student funds via a block grant program outside the usual funding formula.
In the reimbursement model, districts submit expenditures to the state, and the state reimburses the districts for a portion of their spending. In Illinois, policymakers set aside funding for districts that offer bilingual student programs, and districts must apply in order to get reimbursement.
Most states fund emergent bilingual student education through the state funding formula, or the categorical method. About half of these states provide services for emergent bilingual students and provide a flat rate for each identified student, regardless of their level of language proficiency or the type of service being offered.
States using the alternative approach use a multiple weight system to allocate funding. This allocation is based on the amount of time students have been classified as an emergent bilingual based on proficiency level or on the concentration of emergent bilinguals in a single district.
Fair and essential education funding requires state investment. Strong recent research shows that increased funding has contributed to both improved student performance and lifetime outcomes, especially for underserved students. Students succeed when given appropriate opportunities, such as robust coursework, good teachers, smaller class sizes, quality pre-K, and strong tutoring. Many of these, including the recruitment of good teachers, cost money, especially for schools with high numbers of low economic students. The data shows that no matter how smartly schools stretch their budgets, oftentimes many children are left without these opportunities because the state underfunded their education.
unfair funding in the classroom for emergent bilingual students, students from families with limited incomes, and other student groups means fewer educational resources for needed programs, up-to-date technology and equipment, and sufficient teaching support.
When we can establish a system of fair funding for schools, it will send a message that indeed every child is capable and is worthy of receiving the best quality education possible.